and gentlemen, welcome to the August meeting of the Southampton Village Planning Board. If you could silence your cell phones, we'd appreciate it. Could I have a motion to open the meeting?
So moved.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
The first item on the agenda tonight is the public hearing on the scope of the environmental impact statement for Beechwood Latch 101 and 109 Hill Street. Purpose of the public scoping session is to allow the public an opportunity to express their opinion on issues which should be included in the environmental impact statement. The applicant has voluntarily prepared a draft environmental impact statement which has been reviewed by Mr. Cleary, our consultant, and the document appears to be quite thorough. But this is an opportunity for the public to address any other issues which, in their opinion, maybe should be surveyed in addition to what the draft has already included. It is not the time or place for the public to express their support or opposition to the actual plan. It's solely to determine what issues need to be included and studied in the environmental impact statement. Having said that, Mr. Cleary, have I summarized that pretty well?
Very accurately, Mr. Chairman, right on the money. We've asked the applicant to provide a very brief presentation to the board and for the public this evening. Just an overview of the project.
So at this time, I'd like the applicant to make their presentation and tell us what they got in store for us.
Good evening. For the applicant, Ms. Vale, Carol Fritz, 50 Station Road, Watermill. As the board is aware, the purpose of tonight's scoping session is for us to listen to the public's thoughts on what the applicant should study in its draft environmental impact statement, the DEIS, for the application of Beechwood Latch, LLC. The application involves a request for a change in the non-conforming use of a 5.24-acre site from a 67-unit rooming house and inn to a 24-unit multi-family residential condominium development. The property is located at 101 and 109 Hill Street at the site of Village Latch Inn. 5 of the new condominium units would be contained in the existing Village Latch Inn building and the Terry Cottage on site, and 7 new buildings would be constructed to support the remaining 19 condominium units. The development also includes a pool and a clubhouse. The applicant submitted a voluntary DEIS dated March 2016, and after review, the planning board issued a positive declaration by resolution adopted May 6, 2016, requiring the preparation of a draft environmental impact statement and formal public scoping. The planning board then had its own draft scope of the DEIS prepared. The public scoping session provides an opportunity to comment on the planning board's draft scope, and we are submitting a letter tonight which presents the applicant's comments on the draft scope. We're also going to be here to listen to the public's comments on the planning board's draft scope, and we have renderings available to show the public if you're interested as well. Thank you. I'm going to submit the letter. Want more? Yeah, sure.
For the file.
Did you want us to hold up any renderings or?
Board members? I would love to see it, yeah,
Okay.
personally.
Pass it down.
Thank you. Do you want me to hold them up for the camera?
Yeah, sure, that's great.
Sure. So this is an aerial view. We're proposing to preserve the Village Latch building and the Terry Cottage, and new construction, new buildings would be built behind that. The idea being to preserve the Hill Street view as much as possible. The reason we show an aerial view is it gives you a good idea of how the massing would work on the site. 5 units are contained in the Terry Cottage and the Village Latch building, and 19 units are in the new construction behind it. This is a view from Hill Street of the Village Latch and Terry Cottage buildings. The site's heavily treed, so you see a lot of trees here. We had a version done where we removed the trees so that you can get an idea of what it would look like with if there were no trees. The intention is to keep that there. We plan to fully preserve and restore the Latch and Terry Cottage buildings. Minimal changes are proposed to be made. And this is another rendering with the Terry Cottage more prominent and trees removed from Hill Street. Okay?
Can you look at the first one again?
Sure.
Where is the parking for all the units? In front of each unit or on the street in front of each unit?
Yeah, so the site plan we've designed actually has more than adequate parking per code. Every unit has its own one-car garage and driveway space, and then we've designed 2 additional carriage house style parking garages, each with 6 additional spaces. And we have street parking. You can't see it from this perspective, but between buildings there are pockets with 3 additional street spaces. So the total parking calculation is well over parked versus code. Would you like me to leave this up here?
Thank you. Patrick, I know when we spoke at the work session, there was a couple of slight discrepancies between what you felt was in the draft EIS and your wording or your ordering of the document. Could you discuss that?
So the applicant had submitted their draft of the scoping document. At your request, we prepared one as well. There was some disagreement about language and how the document was presented. Minor issues, most of which we've worked out between Gail and I, and it's been clarified. I just want to very briefly touch on the major topics that are going to be included in the document, aside from a very thorough description of the project, which you've heard just described briefly. There will be an analysis of soils, topography, surface and groundwater features, flora and fauna, aesthetic resources, cultural resources, land use and zoning, transportation, utilities and site infrastructure, community facilities, socioeconomic and fiscal impacts, construction impacts, green building and sustainability, as well as the discussion of alternatives. There was one section that was initially included in our draft, which the applicant has requested be removed, and that related to air quality and noise. And as I described to you at last week's work session, it's our opinion that all of the potential impacts of this project related to those issues will likely be below the threshold with which environmental impacts occur. And those are based on the typical planning analyses that we employ to evaluate those issues. So it's my opinion that I don't disagree with Ms. Pesner's request to remove that at all. But again, that would be a decision the board should make at this point.
And is there a copy of the final draft so that members of the public could review it if they so choose?
It's available, and so the planning office, Jackie, has copies of that. So just a final point, Mr. Chairman, tonight is an opportunity for the public to comment if they're here this evening, but I would recommend as well, as we discussed last week, to extend a written comment period. People couldn't be here this evening, and if people are more comfortable providing their comments in writing once they've had an opportunity to look at the document. So it would be appropriate to establish a written comment period for a week or 10 days after tonight's meeting, if you choose to do so.
Thank you. Well, at this point, I'd like to ask if any member of the public here in attendance tonight would like to address the board regarding this application.
Good evening, members of the board. Patrick Fife, Toomey, Latham, Shea, Kelly, Hubert, and Porteraro, 33 West 2nd Street, Riverhead, New York. Here tonight on behalf of Whitefield Condominiums, which is the property to the west of the applicant's property. I will be candid and tell you I was just retained within the last 24 hours, so I have not had an opportunity to fully review the the DGEIS and provide comments regarding the scope and what Whitefield would consider, or the board feels the board should consider as part of that process. I did, however, take a look at the summary, and I would like to just submit for the record a brief page and a half list of just some issues we feel like. I think they may already be part of what's considered in the analysis, but I just for the record would like to submit that. And I also would like, in addition to have the opportunity, as was just mentioned, to have additional time to review the draft environmental impact statement and provide additional comments if necessary. So can I hand that letter up, please, sir? Got a couple extra copies. Just quickly for the record, Whitefield did have one concern. It didn't, according to what I was told, they had not received any formal notice in connection with the application or the prior hearings. It was just through an anecdotal conversation that they learned that this was on tonight. Not suggesting that anything improper took place, it's just that this was the first opportunity, again, that they had learned of it, and my first opportunity to review the plan. So I did put in a request, just to the extent possible, if there are any future notices that have to go out on this, if we could be notified on behalf of the condominium. Just the quick issues, and there were 7, were 1, density. That should be looked at. I know there was a representation in the summary that the proposed density was 24 units on 5.24 acres. Whitefield, which is adjacent, is 29 units on approximately 16 acres. So just that, I think, is something that should be considered. Also noted sanitary. I know that there was a mention in there of obviously something the impacts will be addressed. And I don't know if it's in there, but whether any consideration should be given to hooking the project up to the proposed Southampton Village Sewer District. I saw that there were estimated sewage flows of 7,200 gallons per day, which was an increase over the current 6,950 gallons per day. Also, we'd asked that vehicular access and traffic be reviewed. I believe there was a mention in there that there was a traffic study done. I'll be honest, I don't know the extent of it, have not looked at it yet, but just to the extent that that study didn't capture the peak summer season, we'd obviously ask that that issue be included as part of the review. In addition, also the access, I think the proposal actually has 2 ingress-egress, or driveways proposed for ingress-egress. As opposed to just 1. So that's something we asked to be looked at. Buffering and screening, just we asked that the adjacent property, specifically Whitefield, would have appropriate buffering and screening, and that as many of the existing trees, which it seems like the applicant is looking to protect, that those be kept in place. Also, with respect to parking, just I think certainly the application seems to suggest an appropriate number, but that we ask that you look at the location of the parking relative to the other properties. Again, with respect to Whitefield parking, that would be on that shared boundary. Stormwater runoff, something else, given the density of the hard surfaces, we just ask that that be something that's considered. And finally, just construction mitigation, to the extent there are any impacts with respect to construction, we ask that they be mitigated to the greatest extent possible to protect the Whitefield residents. So that's all I have for this evening, and again, I just would reiterate the opportunity to make an additional submission so that we have some additional time to look at the full extent of what the applicant's proposed. Thank you.
Patrick,
Yes.
one comment. You have here a request that notices be sent to an individual on behalf of Whitefield in New York. The board has no mechanism by which to do that unless there is, in this chain of events, eventually we'll have a public hearing which would receive public notice, but there's no, and part of that might be to send a letter to the adjoining landowners. I do know the building department had made a comment to me that due to their computer system, they did not send notices to all the condo owners.
Okay.
So I can only ask you to tell your clients to monitor this so that they don't come back here and say they didn't get notice on something where,
Okay.
because this wasn't fulfilled.
Okay, no, we will, I understand that, and we'll certainly monitor on their behalf. I'll also check, though, with the building department to find out what address was used for Whitefield. Because my understanding was it wasn't just the individual residents, but the condominium association.
Yeah, exactly, the
Right.
association itself
Yeah,
probably
I-
wasn't triggered.
I don't believe they received any notice either. And again, I'm not suggesting anything improper on the part of the applicant. It's just a matter of having only learned about this in the last couple of
And
days.
if within the 30 days review, if that's granted, if you could come back with specific proposals, it's better than just saying there's a sewage problem.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. Again, I just, for the purposes tonight, I just wanted to identify what Whitefield, in the brief discussion I had with them, felt were the pertinent issues from their perspective. And to the extent we can provide more specificity, or if it's even necessary, again, I mean, it may be already addressed in the lengthy submission the applicant made.
Thanks very
We'll,
much.
of course, do that. Thank you.
Is there further comment?
That being the case, Mr. Chairman, the board should decide if a written comment period is appropriate and the length of that written comment period.
There is one written comment already in the file from the group for the East End, which was received today. I would think we should, since there may not have been enough notification and the final draft has only maybe just been put into the planning department office, we should give the people an opportunity to review it and make written comment. So I think, what do you think, board members, a 10-day period? Everybody okay with that? So we were to allow an additional 10 days for written comments to be included into,
It puts us to August 11th, so we would have a calendar.
yeah.
So, that's not a weekend? Probably not, right?
No.
Okay. Good. And just to clarify process, whatever written comments come in that your board deems appropriate, we will include in the document, and that's the document that you would act on at your September meeting to formally adopt.
Okay, so at this point, the proper step, I think there was one other thing you said we needed to
The
decide.
the air quality and noise section, if you want to make that decision this evening, or with the rest of the revisions that come in during the written comment period.
Let's see if there's any further comment on that.
And then you can make that determination in your final adoption at the next meeting. But you can close the written or the oral portion of the scoping session this evening and establish that written comment date.
So if I could have a motion to close the oral portion of the scoping session.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Does it need to be adjourned as well? No.
Yeah.
Okay. Next item on the agenda, 550 and 554 Hill Street. There's a request from the applicant that this application be adjourned until September, the following meeting, September 6th. And I believe we did adjourn that at the work session. I think we did vote on that at the work session. So if anybody's here to talk about that, see you in September. Emmenon East, 276 North Main Street, also adjourned.
Michael White, Pulaski Street, Southampton. I don't know why it was adjourned. I was under the understanding that Gil was out of town and that he had somebody that was taking this for him. But I think last, at the work session, there was a question about the berm that was there. And we took the berm down to where it originally was. And I also have pictures of it that I took today. And we replanted the trees the way it was.
We actually had a letter from the building inspector saying that we shouldn't
I've called John Foster for a week and a half to meet there and no response. And, you know, to see what he wanted me to do. I took the berm down. I went and spoke with him once and he said the berm was too high. I put it back to where it originally was. I planted the trees back. There was some brush there that we removed and I did exactly what he asked me to do.
We're waiting for a letter from him.
I thought you had the letter.
We don't have a letter to say to go ahead.
Oh.
Where's the berm?
It was hiding the oil tank, so,
On the southeast corner.
yeah.
On the south end,
Yeah.
way to the back.
Yeah. So I took the berm down, it was like 8 feet tall, I brought it back to the original height.
Down that way.
Yeah. And I put the trees back, so now the tank's not covered, so.
So you just need to get with him and work that out so that he tells us that he's good to go.
We need an airplane. You gotta get a drone for me.
Yeah.
Planning board drone that we can hang here. All right.
So Michael, do you understand that?
Yeah, you want a letter from John to say it's okay, that everything was done with his...
Or the building department has no issues with it?
Okay. And when do I bring that back?
No, that way nobody.
As soon as possible.
Including you.
As soon as possible.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Make a motion at the request of the applicant to adjourn for all purposes the Emanon East to the August 29th work session, September 6th meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Hampton Real Estate Partners is closed for decision.
Close for decision, I've contacted counsel for the applicant. There's some issues that have to be resolved before we can define the content of the proposed declaration, and I'm waiting for a response from counsel who is to contact his clients for that information. So a request then by the village attorney to adjourn this to the September 8 regular meeting, September 6 regular meeting.
Seconded?
That's fine, but what the issue, this had to do with the trade-offs, it's setback from the wetlands, right?
Correct, the timing of any remediation, trade-offs.
Because I thought it was all separate, so it's done the plumbing of who does what when.
Well, when is a factor in the discussions, and who does it is also part of it. Whether it's this owner or another owner, and when that happens, and
Yeah.
then get into the specifics of what portions are going to be cleared or can't cleared, or the obligations to do that.
Okay.
I don't think there was a vote on it.
It was moved and I seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 42 and 32 Post Crossing, Donahue and Silnitz. It's also closed
We already adjourned.
and adjourned. In site plan review, the Village of Southampton's application for the ambulance barn on 151 Windmill Lane. So are we going to introduce the letter from the village responding to the applicant?
There is no official issuance of that letter yet. It's under review, but we hope to have that in any day. And I'm anticipating we might have a good chance to have a decision for the September meeting.
This was the letter dealing with borders and all that.
Excuse me?
It's the letter dealt with borders and all that, didn't it?
There was
Site
a
and what you could see and all that.
7-point letter submitted by
Yeah.
the two individuals who have objected the most to this, and that is under review by reply from the village itself.
Thank you.
And has this already been adjourned?
All right. 71 Hill Street, LLC Meridian Way.
Yeah, it was adjourned.
Okay.
That's the guy.
Hi, so at the last meeting, or at the work session rather, you said that you were thinking that you would send a letter to the Board of Trustees with your basic reaction or to the to the sort of, the concept of the plan, for lack of a better word. That you weren't considering this a formal site plan application, but a conceptual plan, and you thought you were ready to send some response to the Board of Trustees. We got the Nelson Pope and Voorhees report, and I also got, because I requested it from Kathy Eisman, a copy of the drawing that she was showing you at the work session with some possible ways of taking care of what Nelson Pope and Voorhees has characterized as maybe a circulation problem. So we delivered to all of you, I hope you all received it, hand-delivered a letter to Village Hall addressed to each of you, as well as to every member of the Board of Trustees. And it was authored basically by my client, Dee Dee Moon, to sort of recap the concept, the history of this, and where we want to be headed. And the bottom line here is that she really needs a resolution to this proposal that she has made relatively quickly, because tenants come and go, leases are up, running out, and we've been at this, not your fault, it hasn't been before you for very long, but we've been at this for over a year now. And although, and it seemed from the last report and from the drawings that you were submitting that this is maybe getting far afield and something that's going to take really far more time than anyone had in mind. So we're going to ask you to go ahead and do what you indicated you were ready to do, and just go back to the Board of Trustees with response to the basic concept of greening over some portion of Baradian Way. We are not in a position to agree to everything in the report or everything that was suggested on that report, particularly things that involve giving up, basically putting in new roadways on the Inn property, on the Southampton Inn property, to make up for the greening of Baradian Way. That in particular, I think, is an issue. But it's also maybe getting bogged down here, as you yourselves recognized, with the legal aspects of, should it be an easement, should it be a license, should it be an abandonment, quote unquote. So we agree with you that the appropriate thing to do at this point is give your response to the trustees in terms of what your reaction to the basic concept is. And we'll go back right away to the trustees and ask them if, they want to do this, sort of limited project that she's offered to do, or if we should just get the road repaved as soon as possible and make it so that it's at least not deteriorated, ugly or unsafe
It puts the
road.
board in a difficult position to review an application that isn't even an application, and we don't even know if it can be an application, because the trustees have that decision in their hands.
Right. Well, they wanted to know what you thought of the concept.
And so Kathy prepared her document saying, if this was an application, these are some of the things that we may have an issue with, and there may be other ones as well, once we see what the formal application really is. But I think we would be prepared to say that if the Board of Trustees were to decide that this application could go forward, and if they were to decide what they wanted to do with regards to the potential future use of all the issues you brought up are not really planning board issues, they're more, if they were to finally say that's okay, and you were to come to us with an actual site plan, I think you've heard that we'd be certainly open to considering it, and beyond that, in many ways, favor to considering it, given many of the questions that Kathy has. But can't really do much more than that.
That's fine. That's fine. And if you would just, send the letter saying, I think what I don't want to put words in your
You want us
mouth.
to send a letter to the.
Well, that's what you said you were going to,
Right, that
yeah, or a
says-
memo or whatever.
Can we do that, Tom?
I can draft up a memo and send that over along those lines, yes.
And I think the idea was, the concept of greening a portion of it was something that was, you were very amenable to. You saw that positively.
We all did, right?
Okay, so we'll go back and, am I missing, yeah, go ahead.
This is,
What?
can we just,
Of course, of course.
informally? So I'm Dee Dee Mon. This just started because I need to do some work on the inn, which is 50 years old, and my companies own both sides of the street, as you know, and the street had been donated to the village as a thoroughfare. It hasn't happened, and so I thought it was a good thing to just take that road, and it's gotten so complicated. It was taking Viridian Way, about 140 feet in, and just making it all green instead of having it be re-asphalted or a pitted, somewhat deteriorated, and not all that safe thoroughfare or cul-de-sac or dead end, whatever that is. And it's not my road. It was donated by some of my partners about, I guess it was about 40 years ago. So I think the village trustees and mayor had asked, from a planning perspective, how you all feel about it. This is all opinion, because we can't put an application in because this is not my road. I was trying to do something that I thought was good at private expense to make our village a little bit better. If in fact there is a purpose to this road, and we're dealing with two things. One of them, of course, is Mr. Viridian's, the honor that this is a road to Moon Viridian, dedicated and named after him. This is not an honor the way it currently is. And the second thing is, if we are considering from a planning perspective, and everybody that I've spoken to has said it's not a good idea to get rid of village-owned property for any reason, but on the other hand, the purpose of this isn't going to happen because we're not going to have First Neck Lane going straight through to Hoover's farm, and there are intervening projects at the moment in privately owned land. So this is a kind of a big deal at this point in time. But if that's something that's important from a planning perspective, I'm perfectly happy to request politely that maybe the village could take a look at this road and take care of it, because this is the entrance for about 40,000 visitors and community members, and I'm trying to make what I own a little bit better. It just doesn't make sense right now for me to go through with a site plan not knowing what's going to happen to the road, because I'd like to, and Tim Rump's plan was beautiful, but was a little artistic. I mean, it's just to create a proper 2016 drop-off for hotel guests, give them 15 minutes to check in and get their bags taken care of, and then park on the east and north, coming around to the 71 Hill where there's additional spaces for parking areas. And then create, I think it's really over 1.5 acres of green with indigenous plants and maybe gray water. I mean, all good things, less pervious lot coverage. So I guess I'm repeating myself, but this is, if it's a good thing, I would like to do it at private expense. If it's not a good thing, I completely understand. We're not pushing this. I'm not expanding the inn, as one of the letters had said. I'm not asking to do a mega development on 71 Hill, although I will, but not now. I mean, not mega. It's from a planning perspective, I think it's pretty. Okay, thank you very much.
I agree with all that, but the idea of greening is great, but the fire marshal has got to agree that the fire trucks can still get in. We don't even know that unless there's an application.
Who submits
There has
the
to be good
application?
circulation for the cars that need to get from the movie theater and get in and out, and that all needs to happen. So there are so many things that need to be considered in the plan, which you can't really consider because we don't even know if there is a plan. And I realize you're between a rock and a hard place, but so are we. And in a couple of recent applications, we have started talking about issues that were not really planned. And there was some question whether the planning board should even be talking about it. But once we started talking about it, the ball got rolling and then we couldn't stop talking about it. So I don't want to put ourselves in that position again.
Of course. I don't want to put myself in that position either. It's okay.
So, again, just to reiterate, I think the board feels, and if everybody disagrees with me, say so, but that in general, it's a good idea, and if the trustees were to put their blessings on it, to allow you to prepare a plan, we would work to see how to do it in the best possible way. And we were happy to write a note to that effect to the trustees.
Thank you very much.
This is a Boeing.
Right.
This is a Boeing venture. I'm gonna look at the note. This is another Boeing venture, the third Boeing venture we're gonna do.
All right.
To help the trustees.
Well, that's what my point is.
Fabulous. I'm ready.
So can I also just speak on behalf, I don't know if you're taking public comment. I'm Rob Verradi and my son. I was attending 23 James Street in Southampton, and myself and the family were in opposition to the project, which I indicated and submitted materials to the board. I've met with Dee Dee a number of times, face to face to discuss, our views, and as such, just for color, some of the commentary and also in your consultant's letter is, this street, because the attachment to the easements is a potential future planning tool. And by greening it over, spending the capital, whether it's easements or abandonments, it's virtually unchangeable at that point. And the village will have could be a potential loss with very little gain. It appears to be an issue of aesthetics at this point, not functionality. And a lot of the functionality is, and I understand respectfully that the plan isn't a plan yet, but a lot of the functionality would be twisted and turned for both fire access and future planning flexibility, whereas there could be alternatives, paving the street, landscaping, presenting a nice entrance as the applicant inferred. And, at some point in just versus saying yay or nay, or this is great or not great, alternatives should be reviewed, because there are alternatives that I think could achieve the applicant's goal of aesthetic attractiveness while still maintaining the functionality, fire safety, as well as the future planning flexibility for the village in that part of town. So just thank you for allowing me to comment. Just wanted to bring that up.
Well, that's just it. I mean, right now, there's nothing to discuss because the trustees haven't said okay.
Right.
So there can't be an alternative because there isn't even a plan. And I think the issues about whether the street's going to go through or not at some point and keep the village planning flexibility intact is a trustee issue. It's not a planning board issue. So once they make their minds up, then we can look at the plan, and that, at that point, it becomes appropriate to say, well, this is what the applicant would like, what are the alternatives to that? Right now, there's nothing to do that.
Sure.
So I appreciate your input. Thank you.
Thank you.
And maybe they won't ask us. My view is they shouldn't ask us, it's their business, so I wish you luck, everybody luck, get them to make a decision. Because they can do it, it's their road.
And then it comes back to us.
It's their road. If they want to send it to us, we'll follow the those things, look in their leg over, as they say in the Pentagon. We'll say it, and then let them judge again.
So what's the applicant to do with?
I'll make a motion at the request of the applicant to
I really
ask Mo to
don't
prepare a
need
memo.
to make a motion, resolution to authorize council to
Yeah.
submit a
Charge vote.
letter
Make a
to trustees that the planning board has favorable concept of this, that if an application is properly submitted, the board would, is encouraged to review it.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next on the agenda is Herbert Real Estate, 5143 Joe Clay. Why is that 5143? What does that mean?
Two different tax matters, probably. It's a 290.
Around the cul-de-sac. You can start with cul-de-sac.
This is a relatively, John Bennett, the applicant, it's a relatively simple, straightforward matter. It's a 296 square foot proposed addition to what's now Topiary, the flower shop. We will require, based upon the village parking calculations, one additional space. Our intention is to go to the zoning board of appeals and ask for a waiver or a variance. Usually they condition it on payment into the parking fund. It's a type 2 action under the State Environmental Quality Review Act because it's a construction or expansion of a commercial facility of less than 4,000 square feet. I'm confident that we can work everything out with the planning board, answer any questions. There was a question about drainage. I do notice there are 2 catch basins shown on the Squires Walton survey, but if there's any more drainage required to take off this relatively small amount of additional runoff from the addition, we can accomplish that, I'm sure. What I'd like to do is ask you to schedule a public hearing for September. At the work session, I was asking as to whether or not that could be waived. There was some indication that the board would prefer to have a public hearing, which is fine. It's totally within your control, but I've asked you to schedule that for September. There will be a planning board public hearing as well, zoning board public hearing as well. So I'm sure the village residents will have more than adequate opportunity to comment on this relatively minor addition. We're adding about a third to an already very small building, so it's a pretty light touch on the site. And it's really to try to meet the concerns and needs of a very long-term tenant that's looking for the retail landscape in the village.
So in simplest terms, this is to make a retail space bigger.
By
To the rear.
296 square
Bigger
feet.
to the rear.
Well,
That's right.
also to get rid of a building that's old and
There's a shed
decrepit and
back there.
replace it in kind with a nice new one.
Well, probably, if you looked at the...
I don't think the
if you looked at
ARB
the
would phrase
plans,
it that way.
yeah. If you look at the plans, the whole idea is to, and we'll have this conversation with the ARB, is to take it a step at a time to see what we encounter in the front. We're certainly going to refurbish the front part of the building. But the elevations in this plan show a sort of one step at a time approach. If there are materials that are beyond repair, we'll obviously repair them, or we'll replace them in toto. But we'll try to save what we can save, such as, I think that was fairly successful over on North Main.
But I asked this at the work session, the plan also includes putting in the air conditioning and all the utilities into a
Yes, there's a proposed additional basement space. So we can provide anything that's necessary, but I think at this point, relatively minor touch on the property, I'd like to go to the public hearing and schedule that so we can at least get that step out of the way. And again, the application is, the only thing that would keep it from being characterized as a complete application would be, in these instances, would be technically an application like this isn't complete until there's been a determination under the State Environmental Quality Review Act. The secret regs have taken care of that for you. They've made it, and type 2 action is a matter of law. So my opinion would be there's nothing stopping you from scheduling a public hearing.
Kathy, do you concur?
I do. I haven't gotten in touch with John Foster to ask him
Okay.
about the accessibility question that I
Oh,
had,
sure.
and about, my feeling about the parking
Okay.
is that you'd be better off
Maybe
having
it is,
less
yeah.
parking and having a ramp where you have the walkway. And that actually would open it up, and
Sure.
that, and I would be willing to write a letter to that effect if the planning board agreed.
Okay.
And, provide support for that would be actually less parking spaces.
But those are all things that
But these are things we can
should
work
hold up
out
the public
later,
hearing, yeah.
exactly.
So no objection to scheduling the public
Not
hearing?
at all.
I'll move a public hearing.
Second, for September 6th, Tuesday.
Tuesday the 6th.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks.
We just need to move quickly to get the notification.
Okay. Anything you can do to help? I mean, I'll take care of my part. It's to get that done. Okay, perfect.
Then we can't don't get mad at us for doing something we don't do for everybody.
You're right. You don't
Killed
wanna go
by the
there.
exception.
You don't want to go there. That's
All
right.
right.
Jeff, did you have anything to add, or you good?
That's great, thank you very much.
Jeff's an innocent bystander.
That
Oh, he doesn't have
being
it.
said, all the items on the agenda have been covered. Could we do a few of the minute approvals? Would everybody be okay with approving June 6th and June 27th?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Make a motion just to vote.
Both of those.
Me too. So make a motion to approve the minutes of June 6, 2016, June 27, 2016.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The next meeting will be a work session on August 29th here in this room at 5 PM, followed by the September public meeting, which has been moved from Monday, September 5th, to Tuesday, September 6th, which will be here at 5:30. All business being taken care of, can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.